Thank you. The meeting is now called to order. This is a Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting for Monday, September the 19th. I'm the chair, Councilwoman Xantha Albert for the 3rd District. At this time, I will call for the roll for those members who are in the committee, on the committee first. Councilwoman Loretta Walsh, she's absent with leave. Councilwoman Linda Gray. Councilmember Nathan Fields. Councilmember Brigida Fields. Councilmember James Spadola.
Present.
And Council President Trippy Congo.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Linda Gray. Councilmember Gray, can you hear me? Councilmember Brigida Fields.
Here.
Councilwoman Linda Gray. Okay. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions and seconding. Okay. With that being said, we're going to go right to the agenda. First item on the agenda is ordinance 22-034, ordinance to approve the removal of a portion of marshland lane located between 1175 and 1190 East 17th Street from the official city map. And who do we have here to speak regarding that? Come sit up front, both of you, please. I think we have Doug and Jim. Are you just going to speak to? Want to come up if we have to ask you a question?
Sure.
Excuse me, Chair. Did you hear me say present? This is Councilwoman Linda Gray.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'm having audio problems. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. Doug, you want to speak first regarding this ordinance?
Yes, so we presented this ordinance a few months back, and this is at the terminus of East 7th Street down on the peninsula. We have 3 properties down in that area that are undergoing environmental remediation. And there's a paper street, Marsh Road or Marsh Lane. We've seen it both ways. And the request is that to do the remediation and potential future development or redevelopment of that area of the city, that we're requesting the vacation of that road and presenting with Public Works. There's not aware of any existing utilities within the roadbed, and then that the vacation of it would allow that portion of Marsh Lane to enter into the Brownfields program to be included in the remediation of the residual parcels, the adjacent parcels to that road.
All right, I'm sorry, I said 17th. Sorry about that, I meant East 7th Street.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, that's back down by Calamar Nickel, back, right?
Yeah, it passed Calmarnick
Past
all the way
the
out.
back.
It used to be called Up the Creek.
Up
was
the creek, correct.
Yeah.
Jim, do you have anything to add to it?
We had started on the Up the Creek parcel 6 years ago, and we have it under agreement. We'd like to get the remediation started, but the gentleman we have it under agreement with couldn't fit the building that he's proposing on Up the Creek, so we bought the Clear Channel piece also, which we're going through. We have our remediation plan approved. We're starting on the ENS right now, and we hope to build, we hope that the owner is going to build an 80,000 square foot warehouse. It's right behind the Pine Box. It butts up to the other building down there. So we're ready to rock and roll, but while we're doing the remediation, it makes sense to do the street right now and not to split it where I get half of it and do half the remediation of a contaminated street. So it makes a lot of sense if we could do it all now.
It also improves the development potential of that area with the street cutting through the property. You'd be limiting the development to, say, more like 50,000 square feet instead of
Okay.
Yes.
what they would be able to get.
Right, I spoke to Commissioner Williams regarding this, and I see, she had let me know, I see it's no negative fiscal impact on the city. Okay, well, with that being said, let me ask, do we have any questions from any council members?
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions for the applicants, just for Public Works, if they're online.
Is anyone here from Public Works? Commissioner Williams, are you on the line?
I am.
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Spadola.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just wondering if you could just add some color. It says Department of Public Works supports the proposed removal. Can you just elaborate, please?
Sure. We don't use the space for anything. There's no water line. There's no sewer line. There's, it's not a street that we use or maintain or need for any purposes.
Thank you.
Do we have any other council members that have any questions regarding this ordinance 22034? Okay, the ordinance requires to be voted out of committee. Do we have anyone from the public that has any questions regarding ordinance 22034? Thank you. We don't have anyone from the public that has any public comment. You have any question? Okay. As I stated, this is an ordinance, so it needs to be voted out of committee. Is there a motion to move this out of committee?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. This ordinance out of committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing the easement of Comcast at Holloway Park. Is Councilman Harley on the line? One second.
Madam Chair, do you have the revised agenda number 3? Because that one was removed.
That one was,
That item was removed from the agenda.
okay, I
Yeah, the
don't have the
website.
revised, I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. This item was removed from the agenda. I didn't have the revised. I'm sorry, I still had the old. Okay, next we have ordinance 22-032, ordinance to amend chapter 4 from the city code to create payment structure for licensing fees for sanitation engineers and firemen, and to reduce the number of persons on the board of examinations engineers from 3 to 1. And this is Councilman Spadola. What's that? Oh, by model. I'm sorry, I missed that. Go ahead.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So this is I'm picking back up the legislation. We spoke about this a couple months ago, and it got some pushback from engineers who still want this examining board to exist. And so basically what we did here is we reduced the size of the board from 3 to 1, and also increased the fee for non-city residents. So it should essentially be break even. So last time we termed it housekeeping, and it turned out not to be. This time, I would like to say it's housekeeping. I did reach out to one of the engineers who lives in the city, and he was on board with it, with this go around. So, this is something that I think is the best of both worlds. And I would like to make 2 amendments to it, if I could. So as it is right now, the examining engine, it has the salary in section 4-241, letter D, as $3,000 per year. But I'm inclined to strike that to 0. Because I look at these positions as public service, as an opportunity for a city resident to give back.
What section was that again? I'm sorry.
This is on the section 4-241. So if it's on the second page, letter D.
Okay.
And so I would like to make a motion to strike the salary as written from 3,000 to 0. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Madam Chair, can I just make one?
Sure.
Because I just want to mention that Councilman Phil is on, and he's a member of the committee. He just need to be brought over as a voting
Okay.
member.
Madam Chair, I think
Yeah.
discussion on the,
No, I mean, I second that we just find somebody, so move this.
what's that?
I said you asked for the amendment, you wanted to have you said on the floor, on the question? Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
for the motion, it was motioned and seconded, so we take it to a vote. if the-
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I
Okay.
thought you was asking me something else.
No.
No, I was
Just
saying,
trying to move it along.
somebody to move it along.
Yes.
Right. I seconded, I said we need somebody, so I seconded, we're gonna say it's so moved, and, that one is, so we're saying 0 salary to whoever, it just says a volunteer.
Correct. And this way, the city can't lose money on it, even if 0 people get a license, but it should be a, very small revenue maker for the city when you look at the fees.
Okay, so that's second, so we go back to move a motion to go back to ordinance 2203, so that was second. And-
Sure. Do we have to vote on the actual motion?
Yeah, I second. I'm saying, do we have any, we need to vote on it.
Yeah.
So moved. We need to
Yeah,
have
we didn't-
discussion
wait for
first
the-
on the question. Really?
Okay, Councilwoman Gray?
Thank you.
No.
I was in support of this until he said that he doesn't want, wants to remove the $3,000 salary. Come on now. I mean, that's just, it's nothing anyway. But I think people's time is precious, and people donate time as they want to donate it. And I think that we should leave the minimum $3,000, and it just seems so cheap to take that away from someone that's willing to do a job for the city. And do we have, since it's down to 1 engineer, do we have 1 engineer in place to do this, or we have to hire one?
Councilman Spadoli, want to answer that?
Sure. So on the first part, I'm sympathetic to those sentiments, but at the same time, the city has a variety of commissions and boards that are entirely volunteer. I think of the Housing Authority Board, Ethics Commission, there's just, planning. There's just a handful of boards where it's just volunteer. And also because, Public Works would say this might not be utilized, so I'd hate for somebody to be on here just collecting $3,000, not doing anything. So I don't think, so I understand what you're saying, but I think in this case, making it 0 to be more consistent, because in fact, I can't think of any city board or commission where it's a paid role. So this would be the outlier. And by making it a 0 salary, we're making it consistent with other city boards and commissions. On the second part, the next friendly amendment that I plan to make, Councilwoman Gray, is because the code doesn't speak to who this person is. So afterwards, I'm going to make the motion to make it a mayoral appointee with council approval. So there is no,
Let's stick with the first one first.
sure, I was just touching on her
Okay.
second question, but yeah, not to muddy the waters even more, but.
Okay, and Councilmember Gray, he did.
Okay, thank you. He answered my questions.
Okay, I was going to say, you did say you have someone in lined up that may be interested?
I don't have a person in mind, no.
Okay, who was the engineer? You said you spoke to an engineer?
Oh, his name's Eddie. I think he lives,
Oh, he was just saying that.
yeah, he was just the
I
person
got
that looked at it, you
I
know.
misunderstood that.
Yeah, but no, I don't have anybody in mind. for the
Okay,
position.
Councilwoman Fields?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Council Member Spadola. My question to you, so this individual, whoever we decide to use for this board, they are going to, they're like a certified engineer, and they're just going to be willing to serve on this board to assist Public Works with, whatever insight they may need from them. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, that is my understanding of the role. I would probably defer to Kelly or Vince of Public Works to give you a firmer answer. But yes, yes. And I
So the role of this person is just to administer the licenses for boiler holder, or the people who have licenses for boilers, who operate boilers in this state, city, and actually outside of the state. So the Board of Examiners really just, they administer the test and then they renew these licenses. Public Works has actually nothing to do with it. All we did was provide a space for them and a file cabinet. That's all we did. So I really don't know what role these Board of Engineers did. So there's a bit of gap in information. It was why our team, and mostly Vince, was lobbying to get rid of it completely, just because it was a role that we feel the city shouldn't be playing at all. But then you had heard, I guess, council had heard some pushback from some people who had a license, and rather than getting the license online, they felt they needed to get it through the city, even though, like I said, the city Public Works at least has no role in giving these licenses.
Thank you. I would like to say that I have spoken to two people today who were involved with the union the last time, and who said they were going to send over their license today. So to Linda, Councilwoman Gray's point, that is going to be something I guess we have to explain to him. If Councilman Spadola is saying he wishes to have them to volunteer now, because they did reach out today. I think they saw it on the agenda, so I did follow up. But neither here nor there. Continue. I just was making a comment.
No, thank you. I have no further comments on the motion.
Okay, so the motion has to be voted on. We're going to say all them in favor. Is there a motion to move it out of committee?
So
Madam
moved.
Chair.
Aye.
Oh,
You have a
Madam-
question?
Point of order. I'm sorry, the motion is to reduce the salary from 3,000 to 0.
I'm sorry. I have my notes right here. So there is a motion to reduce the salary from 3,000 to 0, and there's other motion we haven't came to yet.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Okay, so we're voting on the motion to reduce it from 3,000 to 0. Is there a motion?
It was already motioned and seconded.
Okay, motion carried.
Well,
We're going to vote on it.
correct.
Okay, let's vote on the motion from 3,000 to 0. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. Well, it's the motion that been moved and second and carried, and the yeas win. Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So
Second motion, go ahead.
for my
Amendment, I'm on second.
next amendment for it, I would like to just tighten up the appointing authority for this person. And I would suggest that they are, and the law department can put this in the code wherever, I'm not going to dwell on that, but just very, very briefly, that this person is appointed by the mayor and with approval by a majority vote of council. And I motion that.
So could you repeat that?
Sure. I motion that the appointing authority for this examining engineer is appointed by the mayor with a majority vote from council.
I have a question. How was it, what was the language in there before?
That's what there really wasn't any language in there before.
I thought,
And I emailed, again, I refer to Public Works or John Stant if he's on.
no, Marshall can answer that. I'm sorry. Marshall, would you?
Well, yeah, so as Councilman Spadola was saying, I mean, the appointing authority isn't like really like listed in there. So with the amendment that he's making, more than likely we would add letter G to have the amendment that he wants to have that talks about the appointing authority. I think before it was just understood that it was created, that the council hereby creates, but it didn't actually mention in the legislation the appointing authority.
So
Yeah.
again, so in there, what was the language? It did say something about, it said council members or,
No, it stated
it said
that
the
council.
councils are the appointees?
No, I stated it, I mentioned that council hereby creates and establishes, so that talked about the establishment, didn't talk about the appointments, as Councilman Spadola was saying. We want to put clarifying language in there.
And I honestly, it probably led to some of the confusion that we've had over this because nowhere did it say who was appointing. So now we'll be able to clear it up.
So the mayor approved by the city council.
Mayor appointee approved by city council.
Okay, you want to repeat it so I can second?
Sure, I motion that we add a section
Question.
to the ordinance outlining the appointing authority of this position is the mayor with a majority, with approval by council for a majority vote.
Second.
So moved. Okay, it's been properly moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
All right?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so the motion has been approved to, for the mayor to appoint the appointee, approved by city council members.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any discussion from the public?
Is there anyone from city council members that have any other questions? Is there
Yes, I have a question, Madam Chair.
Okay,
This is Councilwoman Fields. So I guess my question is, it's just the language, but the mayor has always did the appointee, but the language wasn't in there. It wasn't written in there like that.
no, the mayor didn't have, the mayor wasn't in there, period. It was council members who pretty much selected whoever was going to do, who were doing the work for the boiler, engineer boilers. But it's been, basically, the gentleman passed away who was doing it, then other people were volunteers. So it's just something that's just sitting on the books that Public Works has been trying to get rid of. That's what we've been discussing for several months now. And a piece of ordinance, I had held it and then I withdrew it. And Councilmember Spadola just brought it back to try to just, try to make it a win-win, at least one person to be on there, since we're getting calls saying it is some brawlers out there that would like to still come in front of someone and for their examination. And the city was just here to, like Commissioner said, we have a file cabinet and someone would probably look at their tests. So, no, the mayor never had anything to do with it. Any more,
Okay.
any more questions?
Thank you.
Does anyone from the public have a question? Okay, with that being said, let's, that's been, we want to go back because we voted on that, so we want to, that's been properly moved in second. So do you want to, then you want to go back to the whole?
Yes, if we're on the,
Yeah, we're on, now we're back
On the-
on because we're so ready to move.
with some,
So we're back on agenda ordinance 22032, the ordinance to amend chapter 4. So he's made his amendments and now we're right back on it. Go ahead.
okay, so yeah, happy to entertain a motion from somebody.
Second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. It's been, the motion have been moved and properly second. And this is an ordinance that needs to be voted out of committee. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next,
Madam
we,
Chair, may I be excused?
yes. Councilwoman Graham.
Thank you very.
Next, we have someone, I think Brian's here, regarding a resolution authorizing FEMA grant for Lower Brandywine for the river flooding study mitigation, strategic plan. Brian, you on, the line?
Yes, I am on the line. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this grant opportunity. It is a grant which we have applied for already. We've coordinated with Delaware Emergency Management Agency, DEMA, and submitted our application to DEMA for a grant which would help us evaluate the risk of flooding in the area that was impacted by Hurricane Ida that passed through on September 1st, 2021. And I'm sure most of you are all aware of the damage and disruption that caused in the area, Governor Prince Boulevard, kind of ranging from 13th Street probably up to 18th Street, and on either side of Governor Prince Boulevard. And Public Works acknowledges that there is some sort of measures that would need to be implemented to address and hopefully mitigate and prevent that damage, similar damage from happening again. And so we identified this grant program that is administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And the application that we are submitting gets submitted to the Delaware Emergency Management Agency, and then they forward that application on to the federal level. We've applied for $666,000 and $675, $666,675, of which $500,000 of that would be provided by FEMA to Delaware and routed to the city of Wilmington as a subrecipient, and the city Department of Public Works through our water sewer fund would apply matching funds of about $166,675. And the goal of the grant would be to evaluate the risk of flooding in that area and to provide a study of the alternatives to prevent or mitigate that flooding, and also to do outreach with the public to review those alternatives, and then finally to provide assistance to the city in preparing a follow-on grant application to actually apply to implement the alternatives. And this is all done through the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Hazard Mitigation Assistance Program, which also is known as the Building Resistant Infrastructure and Communities Grant, or also known as the BRIC grant program that FEMA administers.
Okay, I see the funds will be used to develop to activate the funds. The flood, mitigation. Oh, I just wanted to say, I think this is really good because it was a, working with individuals over 11th Street Bridge. They didn't receive any funding from FEMA or DEMA. And I know the state and the city received money from FEMA, and the money was for, I would say, property, like bridges, et cetera, but none of the funding went towards any of the residents, which I thought was really sad. So all the work we put in and talked to the FEMA and DEMA, and they came over there and talked to individuals, but to my understanding, since no one died, they didn't get any money, but to me, no one cared that they lost everything over there. So if this is going to be a grant to assist that, to help that, hopefully, if something happens like that again, we could be prepared, and there is no negative impact on the city, no matching funds required.
The matching funds are being provided by the city's water sewer fund in the amount of about $166,000.
Come on, let's see it right
And
here.
the federal portion of the funds would be about $500,000.
Okay, I don't see that amount on here. Let me see.
And we
negative.
have, just to make sure it's being upfront about it, we have applied for the grant. We haven't been notified that we have received the grant, although we are encouraged by the correspondence we've had with the Delaware Emergency Management Agency about our chances for obtaining this grant. So the purpose of the resolution, as you're well aware, is for us to be able to accept that grant if we are awarded it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I see it's in the whereas clause. I'm used to seeing it at the bottom. I see where it said that the total matching grant would be. Okay. Do we have any questions regarding this resolution from council members? Do we have any questions regarding the grant from any residents or, sure, come up.
Good evening. This is Dave Gooley with WMAPCO. I've been working with Brian on this, and I guess I'm just, my main question is to know if you guys have a time frame yet for when that grant would be, is going to be at least decided upon whether or not you receive the money or not. Do you have a time frame for that?
I don't know the exact time frame. We submitted our paperwork to DEMA in December, and then they forwarded that paperwork on to FEMA in January. And my understanding is that in the early fall, so sometime around this time as we're speaking, we should be hearing notification about it, and that the funds would be made available either in December or January of 2022 or January 2023.
Okay, thank you. I guess the reason I bring that up is, bless you. WMAPCO completed a study in that area for the 12th Street connector, and one of the things that we're kind of looking forward to is working on with the work that Public Works did during the flood on the extent of the flooding. It'll be really helpful when we start designing that study with DelDOT for how that road should be built, that connector, to serve as flood protection. And so we really are keying on the work that Brian's planning with this grant to make sure that we're all working together to hopefully solve that problem with the future construction of the 12th Street connector. So very interested in the time frame and look forward to hearing back from you whether or not you receive the grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the public? Okay. Thank you, Brian. This is a resolution, so it doesn't have to be voted out of committee. Marshall, what day would this be on the agenda?
October the 6th.
Okay, this will be on council on October the 6th.
Madam Chair.
Sure, I'm sorry.
If I may, could I ask Kendra or Michelle to follow up with the building staff about the temperature in this room prior to the next committee meeting, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, lastly, we have, and I'd like to state that we had to hold the presentation regarding the vehicle booting for, we have litigation on that, so we weren't able to proceed with that booting presentation. Next, we do have someone here to speak a presentation regarding Wilmington MAPCO. Wilmington Area Planning Council, could you have someone here to speak in regards to that?
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Good to see
Hold-
the
may I-
committee members.
May I speak for one more second? Again, this is Brian Lennon. I think there was 2 grants that were on the agenda, and I'd be happy to present on the second grant after WMAPCO or before, whichever you prefer.
Okay, so give us 1 second, Dave. The other one, oh, DEMREC, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave. You didn't say, I'm sorry. Here it is.
Okay.
I'm s-
So-
I mean, Brian. Continue,
Yes.
Brian. You didn't say anything, and I just looked down. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yes.
We have
well,
another
thank you. Well,
resolution. We have another resolution approving the Department of Public Works sewer overflow stormwater misuse municipal grants program application to DENREC to address the infrastructure needs in the city regarding combating stormwater and sewage overflow. Oh, we definitely need to hear from you with that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, this is a good opportunity and a partnership opportunity that Public Works has taken to partner with the Urban Artist Exchange and City Fest for a project at the old city stables located at 15th and Walnut. I believe originally they were city stables for the horses used for the city police. And then following that, they were then owned by Public Works and used as stables when Public Works had the need for stables. And since then, the properties had various uses, but the Urban Arts Exchange is actively working to convert that space into an event space and amphitheater space. And if you've been down there, they've made quite a bit of progress on the stables portion. And now they're looking to build an amphitheater on the grounds, and Public Works has partnered with them to implement stormwater improvements on the property, in which we can take the stormwater that currently now is getting into the combined sewer system and either being sent down to the wastewater treatment plant for treatment or creating overflows to currently to the Brandywine River for this location. We're looking to implement stormwater improvements on the property that would remove the stormwater out of the CSO system before it gets mixed in with the sewage, and then route that stormwater through a combination of rain gardens and bioswales and underground storage storm tech units that would manage that stormwater on the city stables property. And in doing so, Public Works gets the benefit of reducing our overflows and managing stormwater in a more green way. And the Urban Artist Exchange gets the Public Works contribution to not only managing the stormwater, but handling a majority of the landscaping on the parcel. So that lowers their overall project cost for doing the landscaping of the event space where the amphitheater is going to be located. For this grant, DENREC approached us and noted that they had funds that were made available to the state Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, DENREC, and that these funds would be made available to the state and could be routed to the city for this project because the funds are designated for combined sewer overflow projects and systems such as this. And so the amount of the grant is approximately $421,000 in total. $337,000 would be provided by the EPA, and the city would provide $84,000 worth of matching funds, which has already been included in the project through a state revolving loan fund, which has already been processed and approved by the city, I believe City Council and the city financial process for obtaining a state revolving loan fund. So the state revolving loan funds are actually our matching funds for this. Again, it's $337,000 coming from the EPA through the state of Delaware to the city, and then we're providing the matching funds of $84,000.
Okay, I have a question. So I'm wondering, as they're doing all the work down to the stables, I would think we would be, so you're telling me we're gonna come back and break up some of that land while they're down there? I mean, they're doing major construction now and landscaping. So just wondering, I mean, I know the money is is needed for the overflow and et cetera, and the stormwater. And I'm just thinking, like, they're down there doing all this work now. I would think we would have put all this together, opposed to coming back, trying to break up some of that outside of that.
Yes,
the
we,
work-
we have been meeting with the Urban Arts Exchange, who's developed their project for the event space on the city stables property. So essentially, they're building the amphitheater at this time, and then we're going to come in after them and take care of the landscaping, so that that takes one of the project costs away from the Urban Arts Exchange to manage, and allows them to invest that money in the event space. And then we will take care of the landscaping in exchange for managing that stormwater on the property in a way that helps actually improve the overall appearance and aesthetic of the site for the visitors that come to an event.
No, I was just saying, I hope you kind of answered my question. I was hoping y'all down there working together, because I was just down there with Tina, and I see the work they're doing, and then I'm thinking you're gonna come back and maybe tear up some of that after putting so much money. But if y'all working together now, that was my major question.
Yes, and I would, if you are in contact with Tina Betts, I would, encourage and ask her to show you some of the graphics and presentations of what it will look like, which includes somebody coming to the site would hardly notice that all this storm water is being managed on site. So it really is a good partnership that we work with them. And as a result of this partnership, the Urban Artist Exchange received, I believe it was close to a $400,000 or $450,000 grant from the Longwood Foundation towards constructing their event space. So the partnership really even helped bring funds to their portion of the work as well.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any council members that have any questions? We have anyone from the public that has any questions regarding this resolution? Okay. Thank you, Brian. It's a resolution, so it doesn't have to be voted out. And we don't have any questions from the public or council members. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Sure, have a good one. Okay, now Dave, we're ready for you. So could you state your name and tell us
Yes,
why
my
you're
name
here?
is Dave Gula. I'm a principal planner with WMAPCO. Thank the council members for having us here tonight. We'd like to update the committee on WMAPCO's long-range transportation plan. So it's the regional transportation plan. We have a slideshow. I will walk you through. It talks a lot about policy, talks about outreach. I will go through it as quickly as I can, because I know you're a busy committee and you've had a long meeting, but please stop me if you have questions. When we get to the end, there'll be a little bit of talk about projects that are ongoing within the city. And again, then at that point, I'm open to any questions that you have, even outside of this report. So we'll start with the presentation. Next slide, please. So first, you guys know us. Not everyone does. WMAPCO is the Wilmington Area Planning Council. We work very closely with Newcastle County and the municipalities within Newcastle County, also with Cecil County, Maryland, and those municipalities. All those groups have representation on our board, and we're charged with coordinating transportation projects, both with the states, but also any project that has federal funding. We have a position to make sure that we're going through all the proper steps to get these projects through planning all the way through to construction. We do involve the public in everything that we do. Our website is generally any document that we publish is on the website, so folks can get to the information. So that's something that I think is a little different. People don't always understand that if we've done the work, you can find all about it on our website. And our dedicated sources of funding are 80% from the federal government, and then there's a state contribution from each state. Next slide, please. So we have 4 main documents: the Regional Transportation Plan, which I want to talk about today. That's a 20-year plan. We're looking ahead 20 years, but every 4 years we have to renew it. So we got to go back and look at projects that are in the plan, go look at the goals and the objectives, and if we're meeting them. The second document that we work on is the Transportation Improvement Program. That is the funded projects. That's what most people care most about. The Transportation Improvement Program is a mirror of DelDOT's Capital Transportation Program. So those two documents, because we work together, have to be a mirror of each other. And any project that has federal funding that's in the CTP and then also in our TIP. However, if there's a state-only funding project, that might not be in our TIP. That's where the only difference might apply. Again, we're kind of overseeing how federal funds are used. The third document that we do every year is the congestion management system, where we look at traffic congestion in and around Newcastle County, and every year we try to figure out if there are ways to improve that. Sometimes it means a new project, sometimes it means working with DelDOT and the Transportation Management Center down in Smyrna to make sure that things flow more smoothly. So that's an every year document. And then the Unified Planning Work Program is basically the projects that we have on our agenda for staff to work on. You would be familiar with some of them, such as the Union Street corridor rehabilitation that we looked at with the city within the last couple of years. So that's just an example of that kind of project. Next slide, please. And so how do those projects all tie together would be the Regional Transportation Plan is sort of the oversight document. Again, policies explaining why we do what we do. And then when we do corridor studies from the UPWP, those studies generally, if they result in a recommended project, those projects can then be entered into the Regional Transportation Plan. Once a project is in the Regional Transportation Plan, then it is eligible to be funded in the Transportation Improvement Program and in DelDOT's CTP. So it's kind of a process we go through, which gives the public a lot of chance to comment on all of those things as they work their way into a funded project. Next slide, please. So we're back to this. We're going to update this Regional Transportation Plan. We do so every 4 years. It is the principal plan that gives us basically, the direction that we take on studies, things like that. It's our guiding document. This plan is also, it's the county's, Newcastle County's transportation plan, because they don't have their own transportation planning arm. They work closely with us and with DelDOT. And again, so we're all working together to get to this point. As you know, we also have a monthly meeting with the City of Wilmington department so that we're all working together even to get us to that point. So we're not just working with Newcastle County, we also try to work very closely with the municipalities. It does contain all the projects that are both funded and unfunded. When we say constrained, that means a funded project, and aspirational means we're hoping to get it funded soon. Again, we update every 4 years, and our next update is due March 23rd. So we're out now talking to municipalities and partners to make sure that we're all working together, headed towards that approval process. Next slide, please. So again, this is just the schedule. We have a progress report, which I'll talk about very briefly. We use this document to develop the goals and objectives of the plan, and then we do public outreach to see if those goals and objectives are still what the public wants. Basically, we build on the previous plan so we don't start over completely from scratch, and we already have a background on whether people accept those goals and policies or if they have recommended changes. We're developing the project list now. I have a rudimentary list of the projects in the Wilmington area, which we can talk about at the end of this presentation. We also have air quality conformity, which I'll explain at the very end, but basically we've still got a couple of steps to get to document refinement and then adoption. Next slide, please. So we have a progress report, which we do during the 4 years that we're not updating the RTP. And basically it looks at the performance of the goals and objectives that we've put in place. So it's sort of like how are we doing before we get to the final plan? Are we measuring up? And it does inform this regional transportation plan. Next slide. And this is one way that it does. When we track progress, we look at the goals, the objectives, and then the metrics. How do we measure the performance of the plan and the performance of the long-range plan for the last 4 years? So right now, this gives you sort of an update on how we're doing. 17% of the actions, they're not going as well as we want them to, so we have to continue to work on those. Some of those are growth outside of the center core areas of Newcastle County. There's a lot of growth and push to get into rural areas. Single occupancy vehicle trips speaks for itself. Lots of people driving alone, not using transit, not carpooling, not using other modes of transportation. Vehicle miles traveled is simply a factor of that. The more people driving by themselves mean there's more people driving, there's more miles traveled, and generally that means a little more air pollution is out there. And road safety, again, the higher number of vehicles means there's more likely crashes. When we get to that 23% of the actions that are in yellow, that means they're doing okay. We keep an eye on them. We never completely dismiss them, but it means that we know that things are moving as closer to where they should be than where they shouldn't be. And then 60% of the actions in the plan already are successes. Our air quality is improving. We're meeting the goals and the benchmarks that are set for us. We are working very closely with communities, and those local plans then get funded. Eventually, the programs get funded. We're seeing more and more bike and walking efforts in the area in an effort to get people out of their cars. And the congestion mitigation, it's also helped by having people find other ways to get around. They don't have to drive everywhere they want to go. Next slide, please. We also have a public opinion survey. It is difficult, as everyone knows, when someone calls you on your cell phone, if you don't know that number, you don't pick up. So it's really challenging to do a telephone survey, but that's how we've been doing it in the past. We've tried internet surveys. The challenge for those is one person can enter 15, 20, 100 times if they want. We actually saw that happen on a survey that we did. So we haven't figured out a better way to do this than the telephone, the public opinion survey through a telephone call, but it does work. It just means a lot of calls get made to get to that survey of 600 residents. It does have to meet our demographic quotas, meaning what does our county look like demographically? So that's the kind of demographics we'd like to see in the calls. So we make as many calls as we need to get those opinions so the demographics will match. We do ask people their opinions on the transportation system, and it's what we use to help us inform this RTP.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So when you say the telephones, what's the zip codes y'all targeting in Wilmington?
It's,
Because you said Democrat, you have to have something. What's that?
I would have to get back to you with the direct information, but basically it's random, but it's not so random. We have to, there's, like I said, they have to make a certain amount of calls in a certain amount of areas so that it is statistically a valid study. But I can get you a little more information on that.
Okay,
Our
I
outreach
appreciate
manager
it.
runs that.
Okay, so I would appreciate just the zip codes that you target, or, and I know I had some individuals saying they couldn't get through to a number. So if it's a number you can send over when y'all do it, I'd like to have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. It's just an example of one of the questions is, or a statement, the transportation system meets my needs. Back in 2018, we were up to about 88% of people saying that was so. Post-pandemic, lots of people's lifestyles changed, lots of people's transportation modes and choices changed, and so we're down a little bit to 75%. So that's something we're going to have to keep our eye on as we go forward, but basically that's an example of a question. I think we have another example on the next slide. Transportation would limit me from, and it's a group of choices, so 20% of people who were under $25,000 a year for their household income say that that transportation limits them from healthy and affordable grocery shopping based on the network that we have right now. You can see that number, that percentage number gets lower the more and more money you see in people's households, meaning generally the more money you see in a household, the more the number of vehicles grows, and so those people are probably less reliant on transit, biking, or walking. So it's something we need to know. This is part of what goes into the goals for the study. I think there might be one more question on the following slide. Oh yeah, this was just when we had to add, web-based public meetings are effective. This is strangely also influenced by the amount of money in a household. But I know that our personal feeling is that as much as you can extend your outreach with Zoom, don't necessarily get as many comments as you get when you meet face-to-face. So most of our meetings still continue to have a face-to-face. That's one of our options always. Even based, now that we're sort of coming out of COVID, it's getting a little easier to get people out. But it's just another example of what we ask as part of the phone survey. Next slide. So I'm going to walk you through the goals, objectives, actions, and performance measures very quickly just so you understand them, because it would take a lot of time to explain them very thoroughly. Next slide, please. First goal, and the goals, there's 3 goals, no one is more important than the other. To improve the quality of life is the goal. And so you see there are 4 objectives under this goal. And just to get an idea of what's showing there is what are the metrics that we use to measure the success of those goals and actions. The safer transportation, promoting social equity, those are all things we have to measure as we go through the process. There's a new one, that one that's highlighted is not just supporting disaster preparation, but also national defense preparedness. There's a new one from the federal government that was just given to us in this last rendition of the plan. So this just gives you an idea how we lay out goals, actions, and objectives. Next slide, please. So the second goal is supporting sustainable economic development and goods movement. Again, there are three actions underneath there, or three objectives under there, and then their actions are separate. But using the prioritization process is something we're very strict about, because that sort of gives you the best objective measure of a project. How is it meeting the goals of the long-range plan? We have a couple of new things here. One is to ensure the public accessibility of unique data. That's not actually a problem from us. As I said, all the data we collect for a study or a community project all goes onto the website so people can see it. And then there is a supporting greener transportation system, means that there are new targets for a performance measure target for vehicle miles traveled. Again, one of the ways you measure that you're getting more people out of their cars is to have lower vehicle miles traveled. And the final goal, please, next slide, is to efficiently transport people, not necessarily vehicles or bikes, but people. There are three objectives underneath that. And when you look at the performance measures, the new performance measure is to preservation target spending. One of our keys has always been preservation has to be a big piece of this the funding that you have in your transportation program, because you need to actually have roads that people can use. You don't want to build something and it gets into such a state of disrepair that no one can drive on it, or it tears up people's cars. So that's always high. So we're not worried about meeting that performance measure, but it is nice to see the federal government's kind of looking that way and trying to push more agencies towards preserve what you have first before you go building stuff off some brand new. Next slide, please. So public opinion about regional development, I think it's important just because of the number of things that kind of reinforce the spending on the core areas of our region. Revitalizing existing communities and downtowns is somewhat important to most people. 88% agree with that. It is sometimes or always appropriate to mix residential, office, and retail. Majority of people support that. Connecting neighborhoods, majority of people support that. And planning for sea level rise is also somewhat important. And again, there's a majority that support that. I see a question.
No, excuse me, Dave. I would like to acknowledge that we have Councilmember Nathan Fields is on the line. Is that correct, Mr. Fields? Wendell?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. And so when I go to the next slide, it'll start to make a little bit of sense about this particular, how important this piece is for us. Next slide, please. So when we look at the map that I'm going to show you of how we're funding priority areas, we work with the state's map. The state has a map every year that comes out of their the Office of Planning, and it sets aside certain areas, like certain designates rural areas and developing areas. And so basically we try to work with that map to show where we think priorities for funding are. And so transportation investment area priority, our map then reflects not only what the state says, but also the things that we hear through our outreach. Next slide, please.
Let me ask you a question on
Sure.
this slide. I'm looking at the development area. Now, that area looks very familiar. What area is that?
On the slide we're showing now?
Yeah, no, yeah, the one you
Yes.
just,
Okay, so that yellow developing area is basically just south of the canal and north of Middletown.
and I just want you to explain, where's the community that I'm looking at? What community is that?
And the community areas you see probably just between US 40 and the canal is one area, and then further up is sort of Hockessin over to Pike Creek.
Is that the core area?
No, the community areas are that kind of peach colored. Those basically represent areas where it's probably more servitors. Oh,
I'm going.
the map above is going to basically explain it a little bit better.
Okay, go ahead.
That map that we've got there.
Because I was just confused. I just see.
Yes,
the book, and I'm trying to
you don't
think-
know exactly what it's trying
Right,
to get
it just,
at.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, okay, so to explain it here, the most rural areas are the areas you should probably build the least in. It's hard to control that. We are not a land use agency, so we can't say, don't build there. We can say, it's gonna be a lot more expensive if you build there because we don't have the infrastructure out there for you. But the point being, We also don't build the infrastructure. So again, we're sort of just advising where things go. So that green shows you rural areas. That yellow, or the next level, is a community area. So you see on this map, that peach color that you see, again, that's between US 40 and the canal area. It shows another area up against the Pennsylvania boundary, but basically like Hockessin over to Pike Creek. And those are areas that they're developing a little less dense, but they are a community. They've been there a long time. You're not going to remove those, and you certainly have to provide some transportation improvements there. But you see the light blue is the core areas. That's basically the areas where we have the most density outside of the centers. And Wilmington is that dark blue. That Wilmington is one of the centers. So we've got Wilmington and Newark there. We've got Elkton in Cecil County. And those are the areas where you focus. You want to focus the most of your infrastructure improvement because that's where you have the most and the densest amount of people. So for transit, in the case of transit, it's a lot easier to provide transit in an area like that because you're gonna get more ridership there than you will if you're going out into community areas and developing areas. So that sort of tries to explain those categories for you and show you how they fit into our region. If there's no questions, I'll move to the next
No,
slide.
move to next, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, in Newcastle County, for transportation projects, and based on the funding that came out of the IIJA transportation bill, for 2023 to 2028, we're going to have about $1 billion to spend on transportation projects. Between 29 and 39, we're going to have about $1.5 billion for transportation projects. And for 2040 to 2050, those are projections at this point. We're anticipating $2 billion to spend on transportation projects. And so now we're getting into where does the money go to build these things. So I'll go to the next slide and it'll start to help explain some of the major projects. So we have about 350 projects total in our region. And these are a couple of the things that pop up right away at a high dollar. The transportation and transit expansion enhancements, meaning putting a lot of money into not just new vehicles for transit, but also new amenities for transit and new technology for transit to help it go better, help it to function better, and help it to carry people in a more comfortably and more satisfying for their transit experience. We're putting some money towards new technologies, EVs, electric vehicles. And so the infrastructure is basically there. You need to provide places for people to charge those vehicles. I actually spoke to a gentleman recently at one of these outreach, and he's a city dweller, and it's like, I'm running an extension cord out of my house to plug my car in out on the curb, and it's not very comfortable or safe, and it makes me very nervous. But that's the only option that he has right now. So the key for us is, and there's a state board that's coordinating this, and we sit on that state board, is to find places and find ways to make sure that we're making that investment so people can have electric vehicles in the state and be able to charge them. But also looking at if you're on a trip or if you're driving somewhere, what's the most likely place to have that charging infrastructure?
Right.
Yes.
Thank you, Dave. I just wanted to make a comment. I know Public Works, we had a big meeting on charging the cars, and one of the things that came up is that they're working with the state to try, as you stated, to work together. So it's not just like a city project because they stated the state has the money and they do have a committee that's working on it. So I just wanted to say kudos.
I'm glad to hear that they're comfortable working together
Yeah.
because, yeah, that was one of the
This
new
is very
funding.
costly, excuse me, very costly.
Oh, yes, it is. But it's you have to start putting it in place now because some people say, oh, you wait till you got a lot of cars out there, but you'll never have a lot of electric cars if you don't have places for people to charge them up.
Right.
And so this is funding that was designated by that transportation bill just for this kind of thing. The other thing, the AV, that's autonomous vehicles. I think those are farther out, but we still have to plan for those because if you see the futuristic where a bunch of cars on the highway all driving 60 miles an hour and they're inches apart, there has to be some roadway infrastructure so that the roadways are smart, not just the cars smart, so they can talk to each other. We're working towards that, but this is something you have to start planning now because it's going to be here. Suddenly, it's going to be a thing, and we need to be prepared for it. So DelDOT's working on those things now. Just other big projects that you see, the I-95 and 896 interchanges getting rebuilt. There's an expansion of Tybouts Corner, about SR1 at Tybouts Corner. The Tyler McConnell Bridge is still out there potentially for funding out in 2045. Claymont train station, which will be actually completed within 2023. That project's still moving forward. That was a big funding spend, but that was a great, that's a transit improvement. And the Newark Rail Station is sort of waiting for funding, or the Newport Trail Station is waiting for funding. Newark has been under construction for some time, so the Newport would be a new train station improvement. Not too long ago, we spent about $30 million upgrading the Amtrak station, working with Amtrak in the state of Delaware. So that station is actually in a pretty good shape right now. Next slide, please. So here's where we get to the map of the projects that we see up there now that are currently funded. So what you can see downtown, we've got Orange and King Streets. There's a project that should be underway this fall. It's going to improve transit amenities. It's got some improvements at 3rd Street to make a safety improvement because there was a crash with a fatality there. And so to make that safer, that just kind of fell into an area where we were already making transit improvements along that stretch. Walnut Street is due for funding as well. That's going to be moving forward. If you remember, not too long ago, we completed the section between Front Street and 3rd Street, or 2nd and 3rd Streets, where you used to have the sweep, which created another safety crash area. So they pulled that sweep out and basically created some new land, but also regulated all the lanes there so that it would work a little better and flow a little better. Other projects that are out there that are not all completely funded, you can see there's a river walk, a stretch of the river walk that's wrapping all the way around, not just the existing river walk in green, but going all the way up and then connecting to other parts of other existing sections of trail. That's part of the East Coast Greenway. So I think the next slide kind of
And
explains.
Dave, excuse me, I'm
Yes.
sorry, before you go to the next slide, could you send me over something so when I have a meeting, I can see right here, but when they are asking me about this, because when I have a meeting, I will go over this, but can you just send me, like you have the list that says like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just for page 22, everything that's in pink, can you send me something so I can just, when I read it, I can see it, but.
Yeah, it's a
when
little
they-
hard to, yeah.
When they're asking me, I could just like, make a copy, get it typed up a little bigger so I know what I'm saying.
Will do. And what we also are going to have, and we're still working on, is an interactive map on the webpage. So basically, if you're going through and you're looking at that map, you could click on one of those projects. It would tell you all. It would describe the project. It would tell you when it's supposed to be funded and how much is getting funded for. So that'll be helpful.
That'd
But
be
I
excellent.
can also get you a list. And then the next slide, it gives you a little bit of a feel of what's floating around in Wilmington. So
Okay, this look like it's it, right? This is
it's
it.
close,
Okay.
but yeah, the interactive
Okay.
map's going to be a lot easier to work with because it'll have more information.
Okay, I
Next
see,
slide,
I
please.
just, okay, thanks.
So this is just looking at some of those selected projects. 12th Street Connector is a project that's got funding. We did apply for a grant. We hoped a federal grant that would move it along a little quicker, but we did not make that grant. We may resubmit it this year in conjunction with the city. We're going to see how that goes. As I mentioned, King and Orange Street's moving forward this fall. That's shelters, new, working on some of the curbing, creating better and safer bus amenities along Orange Street, but also making a big improvement at 3rd Street. Walnut Street is coming soon, and that's really to complete that project that started between Front and 3rd. We're going to take it all the way up to 16th Street. And Garish's Lane is another project that's been floating around for a while. And so what we'll have is a much better list.
Is Gash's Lane funded yet?
I'm sorry.
Has Gash's Lane been funded yet?
Garish's Lane is one of those that's got some funding, but some of the funding has been transferred to other projects. Like you may be aware of it's shown on the map. It's the South Wilmington, it's like a separated trail. I don't know what the official name of
Okay,
it is.
okay.
And
So
that's
not
actually
quite.
designed to connect from the 76ers field house over to soccer fields, but also to Southbridge.
So that's, right, that's on hold right now.
All right, well, that's where some of the Garish's Lane funding has gone. So what we'll do is we'll kind of get you an update on all those
Okay.
projects.
Okay.
Okay, so next slide. Okay, here's a couple other ones. Union Street is a study that's shown as funding, but it's shown outside of the 4 years, so it's basically saying we're promising funding, but we aren't showing you just when you're going to get it yet. 7th Street improvements, we've been seeing them happen a little at a time through some other grants, but there is funding for that project as well. That Swedes Landing and 7th Street intersection improvements, that also includes, I believe, down with 4th Street, right on that bridge where you have an unsignalized intersection there that needs to be signalized. Those are all part of that 7th Street improvement. There's a grade separation plan out at SR 141 and 48. I don't think that funding is as close. Governor Governor Prince Boulevard has a road diet plan, so there's a study that's going to be continued there. When we say road diet, we're saying you probably have more lanes out there than you need. It was done a study to look at how you can improve transit performance and transit amenities along that stretch by possibly taking one lane and making it more for buses. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of city roads that would probably fit under that definition of you probably have more lanes than you need.
Yes.
I can think of some Southbridge, just outside Brandywine Hills by Music School, Banner Boulevard. How do you get some of those projects on this list? How are these projects selected?
Okay, so those projects usually come from working with communities. We did a couple of those studies. Well, WMAPCO worked on the Governor Prince study with DART as a transit improvement, but as part of that transit improvement, they said, you got more lanes out here than you need. Let's see if we can figure this out. Union Street, technically, that's already happened. It used to be 3 lanes. We used a really quick paint improvement to narrow it to 2 lanes and put some parking in that isn't super popular with some people, but others it is. It's got a bike lane that's really scary to use, and that's why we followed up with that Union Street study to say, what's the final configuration of this road, and how do you make it feel safe and be much safer? So it kind of goes to that road diet. DelDOT created a study looking at pedestrian safety within the city. And so based on that study, and the results aren't fully out yet, but the initial results said, you got a number of streets that you want to see. You don't need as many lanes as you have. Having multiple lanes and having wider lanes means traffic's moving faster, but it also means that pedestrians have farther to cross. So you did see for a little while, there was like a bunch of cones went up on 2nd Street to basically block a travel lane. That was sort of what happens if we, like a pop-up. What happens if we do this? What happens to traffic? I think there's a consideration for a lot of different streets. You're going to see that change. 4th Street, that 4th Street project I mentioned that's funded and that's been out to the public, that actually concludes a road diet to say you don't need 4 lanes here. You can move the traffic you have in 3 lanes. If you have a center turn lane, you will avoid some of the crashes that happen in those left lanes or those right lanes where people are double parking or they're suddenly making quick turns. Walnut Street's also going to have a road diet, meaning you've got 5 lanes in some places on Walnut Street, and it goes people drive much faster than you do because it looks like a highway. So that is already planned to make a road diet and try to improve not only pedestrian crossings, but also try to slow the speeds on those roads. So it's not a citywide program yet, but I think this DelDOT study will help us get to that. We can really look at other ones and say, there's a lot more that we can be doing here. So I hope that answers your question. We're going to continue, and I'm hoping to roll out that study so people can get a look at it and really get a good public outreach on it as well.
Thank you.
I want to say you did I want to say you did a great job on Union Street. I know it was real fast. I remember Bud was working on it. That was, so when you ride down there, you see that little bike lane, you see how, and it looks like you get more for your parking, for your buck when you're doing the angle like that.
Yeah. The final product, I can make that available as well if you haven't seen the final concept that was recommended, but it is going to look even better when we get to that point. All right, I'll just finish. I don't think I've only got a couple of slides left. So next slide.
Madam Chair, Councilman Daly has her hand up.
Okay, I'm gonna let her ask a question right at the end because he's almost done. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, our next steps are to continue the project listing, and as I said, that map that'll show you interactively lets you look at a lot more information. Air quality conformance analysis means some of these big regional projects, they have an impact on our air quality, so we need to make sure that we're modeling that through the traffic model that DelDOT has. And then we're going to continue our outreach through basically all the way through March. But we have a scheduled event on February 8th. We call that our Town event. We usually highlight some transportation innovation or issues. This year that will be for the RTP. And then I think the last slide is just thank you. And any other questions?
Okay, Councilwoman Fields, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
I have a couple of questions. So I definitely know about the 4th Street, what is it, you call it, highway diet?
It's
I
we call it a road diet. People call it lots of things, but yeah, road diet's sort of the way what it's called now.
Okay, a road diet. So I know, like we were talking about it just being 2 lanes, but now I heard you say 3 lanes on 4th Street?
Yes.
Starting from, where would it start from? Walnut all the way up to Union?
No. That is the first phase of the project. It goes from Adams Street to Walnut Street, where you have 4 lanes now. You would go down to 3 lanes. So you would have 1 travel lane in each direction. Then you would also had center turn lanes. It was started as a safety project because there were a lot of crashes and concern with pedestrian crashes along 4th Street because 4 lanes to cross and the speeds that it generates because it's 4 lanes and they're wide was making it unsafe for pedestrians to try to cross it. So the goal was to reduce the travel for pedestrians, the crossing width, but also to make the lanes a little narrower so that people might slow down a little bit more, and also to give you a little bit of safety when you do make a left turn. You're not just sitting in a travel lane that somebody's not paying attention. You have a dedicated turn lane to make those left turns.
Next question?
Yes, may I follow up, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Thank you. My next question is, both Second Street, from Jackson, let me see, yeah. From Jackson all the way up to Union. Now, I remember, I was aware of the cones and different things like that. You said you will have that study available on how it looked, or, what you all are going to suggest for Second Street?
Yes, it's a DelDOT pedestrian safety study. I don't have the results yet, but we want to sit down and not only look at the results of the study, but also have potentially come up with a couple of ideas before we go to the public, just to talk about how we can make it safer and a little more comfortable for people who have to cross the street.
Okay, thank you. That was my only questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there any questions from the public for Dave on this presentation? Okay, Marcia, come on, I'm sorry.
Just one question, Mr. Gula. With the infrastructure bill money, does that help fund a lot of these projects? Do you know?
Some of the infrastructure money, we got a little bit of a bump, which was
Okay.
nice. We got a little bonus money, and some of the projects then also there's money directly for some other things. I don't know that they go directly into the pedestrian improvement. That's a study that DelDOT has sort of been working on for a year or two, and they're just wrapping that up now. There are more grants than anything, which means it's a competitive process. You apply, you put together an application, you apply for extra money to get to some kind of an improvement. And that's something that there's a lot of in that IIJA. There are a lot of opportunities for grants to try to fund projects. As I said, we looked at money to get the 12th Street connector moving a little faster than the money that we have coming in from the state and the federal and the regular federal funding. So we get a little bit more money. It's not necessarily all just discretionary, use it wherever you want. Some of it actually has, like I said, additional money to look at where you're going to put electric vehicle charging and things like that. So it's kind of varied. The guidance on that bill is crazy. There's a lot of information that we've been reading up on, and there are still some of those grants that we don't really even know yet what you can do with them, because the federal government kind of puts those out little at a time. So I don't have good specifics for you for everything, but if you want to talk, I could probably get you some more information on, so if you have some specific questions on things that we can look at.
Okay. And Madam Chair, just one other follow-up question.
Sure.
And does this plan link with the city's overall comprehensive plan, like some of the major projects?
Yes, one of
Okay.
the things we worked on, some of the projects that I mentioned have come out of studies that we looked at through the comp plan process, like Union Street. Union Street was favored by many people to be more of a pedestrian street than what it kind of is now. It's more like a car street. And so, yes, we looked hard at the comp plan, but we also meet monthly with the City Public Works and Planning to make sure that we're all kind of working together in alignment. But I also invite you to invite me back anytime to talk about other projects if you have some specific things that you want to mention. I know you have a time limit for this meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. With the young lady in the back, do you have any questions?
Dawn's here with me to make sure I don't miss any questions that you're asking, and so the things we owe you, she's helping me out to make sure that we don't miss anything. If you had certain requests, like you said, you'd like to have that project list, so that's something we'll work on.
Okay. Any more questions from council members? Any questions from the public? With that being said, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Great job.